Hi, new teachers. My name is Kwame Sarfo-Mensah, and I am the founder of Identity Talk Consulting, a global educational consulting firm that's dedicated to developing K-12 teachers into identity-affirming educators. And today, I'm going to talk about classroom management, which is something that is very important for you all to know. One of the biggest hurdles you may come across as a new teacher is figuring out how to maintain order and a safe space within your classroom environment. How do you create a space that's going to be welcoming to your students, but also will allow for you to maximize on your ability to deliver instruction and maintain some structure within your classroom? So I know we only have a few minutes together, so I have a few ideas that I feel will be valuable to you all. And there are many, many more. This is not the end all be all list, but I think these are the top few strategies that you should definitely incorporate into your practice. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Number one, I want to talk about call and response. So when we talk about call and response, what we're basically doing is getting the attention of our students without having to utilize our voice. Because over the course of a 180 to 200 day school year, you're going to have to use your voice a lot to teach, use your voice to make decisions, use your voice to talk to colleagues, fellow faculty members, and administrators. So you have to preserve it as much as possible. And one way to do it is by creating some signals that will allow for you to get the classroom back in order, especially when you need to address the entire class. So when I was in the classroom as a middle school math teacher, there are a few things that I did in order to get the class back in order. If I saw that there was a lot of talking or there was just a lot of things happening and I needed to just get everybody's attention, I would do a clapping pattern. So I know we're not visual right now, but I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate what that is. So let's say that students are talking and you're trying to get their attention. I'll simply just do a loud clapping pattern like this. And then students respond back with, and you can even switch up the cadence too. So sometimes I might do a beat, and then students will come back with the same response. And if you want to incorporate some hand motions in the process, you can do that to make it fun for them. So that's something that I did. I know some other people, they do the countdown method, whether it's a simple 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And by the time they get to 1, students are fully focused on you, the teacher. So there's a lot of things that have to happen there. But call and response is something that you want to incorporate, and there are many ways in which you can do that. And I promise you, if you're able to maintain consistency with that, you're going to be able to get the attention of your students and preserve your voice at the same time. Another thing that I want to talk about is what I like to call the power of proximity. So as a new teacher, you may feel timid, you may feel nervous during those first few weeks because you don't know your students and you don't want to step on people's toes. But here's one thing that you have to understand. It is so important for you to move around your classroom. You cannot be stationary in front of the classroom the entire time you're teaching because you're not going to be able to capture everything that's going on with your students. So with the power of proximity, what we're talking about is the importance of circulating your classroom, but also understanding that when you're able to get close to students, particularly students who may be off task, students who may need some redirection with their behavior, you're also letting those students know that, hey, I see what you're doing and I need for you to get back into focus so we can get through our lesson. And sometimes you don't need to make a big fuss out of it. It's just something as simple as, let me circle around. If I see some talking, I'm not going to embarrass the student by making a huge scene. I'm going to just simply walk over to the student as I'm still teaching, and I may tap his desk. I may give a look, and that student will know, okay, I got to stop what I'm doing and get back into focus. So power proximity is important because if you're not seeing what's going on, If a student believes that you're not paying attention to them and they can get away with whatever, they're going to do that, because the one thing that students do is they will try to engage in negative behaviors when they think that the teacher's not looking. So it's important for you to always be attentive and always just walk around to see where students are, right? Especially if you have a big class, you want to be able to do that. All right, another thing that we want to do is what I like to call the pause and stare. And as a child, you may have seen your teacher do that with you or with your classmates. So what is the pause and stare? It's exactly what the title suggests. So let's say that you are in the middle of teaching a lesson and you notice that there are students who are talking in the back, or there's some activity that you know shouldn't be happening. Rather than call out the child and embarrass them, you'll just stop the lesson and you'll stare directly at the students who are causing the misbehavior. Just stare at them. Don't say a word, stare. And what's going to happen is you'll see some students wonder, why did you stop the lesson? And they're going to look around and see that, oh, there's a student who's talking, there's a student who's playing around, and they may be the ones that say, hey, stop talking. Come on, listen, right? So when you're doing that pause and stare, you're now putting the responsibility and the agency onto the students to get order back in the classroom. And this is especially effective when you have really strong relationships with your class and they already know what time it is in terms of how you operate your classroom space. But here's the thing that's important. You don't continue your lesson until you see that child or group of children fully back to focus. So, for example, if you see that they're still talking, you don't continue your lesson. You wait until it gets fully silent and you maintain your eye contact with those students until they fully redirect their behavior. That is so important. Sometimes we make the mistake of doing the pause and stare. You might pause the lesson, but you don't give a long enough stare to where those students redirect their behavior, and then you start the lesson again and they still are at it. You got to see it all the way through that process. So that's the silent pause and stare. And I want to also talk about positive phone calls, because when we talk about classroom management, we also have to talk about relationship management, because part of classroom management is managing relationships with students, building rapport. And what better way to do that than to send positive phone calls home? It's one thing that tends to happen, and this is a mistake that a lot of teachers make, not just new teachers, but even veteran teachers. We only call students' homes when a student is either misbehaving, when they're not submitting their homework, when they are failing exams or tests or quizzes. It's always about negative stuff, right? But imagine what kind of relationship you'll be able to have with a parent when you're able to mix in some positive phone calls with the negative, right? Almost like a sandwich, right? Because with positive phone calls, you're letting the parent know that you truly are invested in the growth of their child and you want to see the child succeed. And you're not just being negative or picking on the child whenever they do something wrong. You also want to identify when they do something right. And this is especially important for students who you may view as quote unquote behavior challenges in your class. They need more positive reinforcement than anybody. So even when they do little things like raise their hand in class, or they have a 2 or 3 day streak of submitting their homework on time when they had this issue of chronically not submitting homework, you want to make a big deal out of it in order to build confidence, but in order to build the habit into the student. Because here's the worst thing that could happen, right? When you are dealing with a student who might be struggling with their behavior, or they are not submitting their work, or they're failing your class, and you don't call the parent when these things are happening, but then 2 or 3 months go down the road, parent comes for a parent-teacher conference, and they find out for the first time from you, the teacher, that their child is failing, and you're already 2, 3 months into the school year, what's that parent's reaction going to be? They're going to wonder, how come you didn't let me know in advance so that I could intervene in the situation and support my child? They're going to be infuriated. So it's important that not only you're making positive phone calls, but you're also putting together a schedule where these conversations are happening regularly enough so that parents are aware of what's happening in the classroom. So those are some strategies that you definitely want to consider. So just to wrap it up, we talked about call and response. We also talked about the silent pause and stare, power proximity, and finally, making consistent and positive phone calls to your students' parents. And hopefully, these small tips will allow you to experience sustained success in the classroom. So that's all I have for you all today, new teachers. Thank you for tuning in to this new episode of New Teacher Talk, and hope you're able to tune back in the next time.